What we have here is a Hacker Autocrat. Now, that's a bit of an odd name for a radio, isn't it? It's not one I'd have chosen. Presumably the marketing department, when they came up with that one, were, in the words of the late Sir John Betjeman, in various bogus Tudor bars in Maidenhead.
It's not their fault. They do not know the bird song from the radio. It's not their fault. They often go to Maidenhead. There's nothing wrong with Maidenhead. You know, Maidstone's a shit, but Maidenhead's a lovely town, so, you know. And talk of sports and make of cars in various bogus Tudor bars, and daren't look up to see the stars, but bouch instead. You know what? He's never burped. You know. And they made him a Knight of the Realm. Overrated.
Nevertheless, there is some logic behind it. There was a Hacker Democrat. I do have one of those, but I don't have it to hand at the moment, but I'll show you a picture of it right now. It certainly looked a bit different, doesn't it? It looks more like a traditional Hacker, really. And when we switch back to this one, it looks more like one of the modern Hackers. This has pretty much the same circuitry as the Democrat. Now, this is one I worked on a while ago, and I didn't cover it on the channel because there wasn't really a massive amount to say. It's the usual thing with the AF transistors. Previous owner had replaced a couple of them, another one had gone, I replaced that, I cleaned it up a bit. And it is a nice set, although compromised by the fact that it's medium wave and long wave only, and there's not going to be many stations available for it much longer. The eagle-eyed would notice that the knobbage is a bit incorrect here. One of the knobs is broken, and I'm a bit limited on this because it requires a 1/4 inch D shaft knob, and they're not really that easy to get hold of, surprisingly enough, although they used to be the most common thing ever. It is 1/4 inch as well, not 6mm, which is what the modern ones are, and there really aren't very many around, except I've seen a few for guitars, but they're usually bright orange or something like that doesn't really fit with this. Now, for reasons we'll discuss in a moment, this video's taken me a bit longer, a fair bit longer, well, quite a bit longer really, than I expected to complete. And in the meantime, I've dug out one of my Hacker Democrats, and given that we are in the middle of an election campaign in the UK, it might be a good idea to have a splash of democracy and compare these two directly rather than just through pictures. And as you can see, it's not quite a clear cut, one's bigger than the other, although it's clear that the older style, which fits in with the older house style of the Hackers, such as the Herald and the Sovereign, this is bigger, it's sort of deeper, but not quite as long as the Autocrat. So they've basically kept about the same area, but sort of slimmed it down this way and widened it this way, and changed the styling a little bit, but not very much. Certainly not looking from the top here, and ignoring, as I said, that I've had to put a couple of replacement knobs on this, although the original knobs for this were not the style of the knobs on this Democrat. They were more the style of the knobs on, more like you see on the Roberts radios. Anyway, back to the plot. As I said, there's not much difference between the actual circuitry of the Democrat and the Autocrat, but what you will see here is a button marked Auto. Now, you might be wondering what exactly gets automated, what automatic things happen when I press the Auto button. Well, absolutely nothing, I can tell you. Auto here is being used more in the American usage of automobile, because that's what it's for. And when you press Auto, it disconnects the internal ferrite rod aerial and takes the aerial feed from the car aerial socket, which is on the side here. So you can hear we're not getting anything at the moment, but if I shove a bit of random wire in the side of it,
that he is missed.
You can hear it come back again, although quite faintly. That's why it's called an Autocrat. The Democrat also has a socket for a car radio aerial, but it doesn't have this Auto button to disconnect the internal ferrite rod aerial. And the reason they did this was to reduce the interference from the rather noisy contact breaker based car ignition systems of the time. So taking out the ferrite rod actually improved the quality of the reception you're going to get. They also say in the manual that it was shrunk down, or the dimensions were shrunk down from the Democrat, so that it could fit into the average car glove box. Now, I don't have a 1960s car anymore, to check that out, but it does seem a bit odd. Why would you want to put it in your glove box? Because the speaker grill is down here and there's another grill at the top, but if you shove it in your glove box, then they're both covered up, so you're not going to get any sound at all, are you? Having said that there wasn't much to say about the Autocrat, I seem to have spoken about it for quite a while, but the reason that I wanted to take a look at it today, there's a lot of talk about Bluetooth conversions of radio sets, and sometimes people just strip out the guts of it and just stick a separate Bluetooth and audio amplifier in, and many of us in the old radio community find that to be a bit offensive. So I thought maybe there's a sympathetic conversion available here. I don't need this auto functionality, but it is a double pole, double throw switch, and I could use this perhaps to select the Bluetooth instead of the long wave or medium wave, and in that case we've still got the functionality of an AM radio. Now, fair point, as we've covered many times, the functionality of an AM radio might not be important that much longer, but it's still nice for it to be there. Before I start looking at that though, I think I'll just play you some generated AM radio through the aerial socket, because one of the things is this has really good sound quality, and people don't necessarily believe that AM radio can be good sound quality, but I'm going to demonstrate that now. Now you can hear it here with some YouTube non-copyright music that is being played through it by this excellent little circuit you can get on eBay, the mini mod thing. I'll put a link to that in the description. Now this is going via a loose looping connection into that aerial socket, so I'm not actually physically connecting, I'm just looping it in there. So, and you can hear that it is quite decent quality really. If I switch, and I'm in the auto mode, so I'm using that socket, if I switch back to the ferrite rod, I don't know if you can hear it, but when it is quieter you can hear more interference, as we've got general sort of shash from switch mode power supplies and things in here that are interfering with it. So that what they were trying to do definitely does work. Like I said, I want to repurpose this button to be a Bluetooth switch. So let's have a look at how we can do that. Now I've got this Bluetooth device here. There's many of these available online, but I picked this one for a reason, which is that A, it's small enough to fit, but then probably most of them are. But the other thing is, most of them have, as this one does, an ability to supply through a micro USB socket here at 5 volts. But this one also has the ability to go, I think you can just about, can you see that there? Let's do a bit of autofocus defeat. It says DC 5 to 35 volts on there. Now that I found was quite important, because the power supply for this set, and this is a typical old Hacker set, if I take the back off, there are two big 9 volt batteries, so it's actually 18 volt supply. Where are we going to put it? Well, I think on the back of the plate here, which is the bottom of the tuning area where the tuning mechanism is. And then what I'll do is basically cut away the tracks from the auto switch, and I'll leave it so that they can be bridged again if somebody wanted to put it back, but I'll short out the bits that are in the non-auto position so that it works off the ferrite rod still, and then rewire that. And having this being a double pole switch means I can use one to switch the power for the Bluetooth module and the other one to switch the audio for it. I think it's worth having a power switch on off for it, because A, it's going to use some power, but then the fact that it's going to use power is mitigated by the fact that we've got big heavy batteries in here. The other thing is that I'm slightly worried that if the Bluetooth power is on while we're trying to use medium wave or long wave, it's just going to create a lot of electronic noise that is going to stop that working. So there's a slight complication, isn't there always? Here are the wires from the external aerial socket. So that pair of green and black, there's multiple pairs of green and black, so at least two of them, which makes it confusing. But that pair of green and black comes up here, and I don't know how easily you can see it, but it connects onto that switch there. The only problem is that switch is the tone control switch. Why is the external aerial connected to the tone control switch? But it looks like if you turn it over, if you look at the one it's connected to, the pole it's connected to, which is this one here, it's not connected to anything else. So the tone control switch is a double pole switch like the aerial auto one, but it only needs one pole to do the capacitor, to switch the capacitor in, which is what this separate pair of green and black wires are. They obviously like green and black so much they used it twice. And then this pole of the switch doesn't actually get used for anything at all. So they've just used it to anchor onto here and create a way for it to connect onto that track. Which doesn't bother us really, because the tone control we don't really have to do anything with. That track connects through there. It then goes off to the long wave switch. So we can turn our attention to what we can do with this auto switch here. So the auto switch, what I want to do is cut all the tracks away from it. But obviously what I've got to do is make sure that these two connections here are made, so when it's out, this pair of terminals and this pair of terminals are connected. When it's pushed in, this pair and this pair are connected. Now I want to obviously cut all the other connections to it, but I still have to make sure that whatever's connected to here, and there seems to be something on the other side because the wiper of that pole isn't connected to anywhere on this side of the board. This one, these two would have to be connected, so whatever that's connected to, which looks like the tuning capacitor, would have to be permanently jumped over to whatever this one's connected to, which is one of the wipers or one of the poles of the medium wave switch. So we'd have to connect those two together, having cut the tracks away. And then I just need to find out what that middle one is on the auto switch, whether that goes anywhere, and indeed it does. So on the other side, the middle of the auto switch has got another green and black pair on it. We can't get enough green and blacks, can we? It's chocolate, isn't it? Anyway, so that goes off over here to this subboard. So I'm going to have to find a way of keeping that connection in place. So I think that's the first thing to do. I need to get all these connections independent of that switch before I start hacking away. Right, so I've now cut the tracks around that switch and isolated it. I've put the little bits of Tipex on to mark where I've cut them, just in case I ever wanted to reverse them, and also for any fault finding that I might need to do if I introduced it. But the radio still works. I put a couple of bypasses in here, and out of that green-black pair that was connected to that switch, I've rerouted the green to where it would have gone to with the switch in the closed position. Now I'm going to connect the Bluetooth not on this side of the board, but on the other side, because it's rather easier to get at those pins from that side and causes less carnage to the board than we've already introduced. So that's the next plan. Also I've got to find a way to mount it, but I'll wire it up first because I think it's going to be mounted about here, which means I'll probably have to drill a couple of holes or 4 holes in this, which means taking all the front off. And once I've done that, of course, it won't be easy to get at that switch. So the next thing to do is look at the circuit and work out where to take the feed of the power and the feed to the audio input. Now I've got everything connected up now. I've got the switch to cut off the audio, so that's on receiving some signal. And if I press the auto switch, it cuts off the sound. So I could go in on the 2 pins on the other pin of that switch to bring an audio signal into it. The only problem I've got is with this Bluetooth module. Now, as I said, I'm going to power it off the 18 volt supply of the unit, but this is it with no signal and no audio connection to it at the moment. And what I'm going to do is just connect up the power through these little push fit connectors here. So I'm just going to put the positive line in here. You can hear a click, and then you can see that thing flashing there just about. But now look what happens. This is just connecting the power, and we appear to have a swarm of bees doing a Kraftwerk tribute album. This is not exactly what we want, is it? I'm just going to take that off again. So all of that noise, that digital noise from the Bluetooth unit, is getting back through the power lines. Now, a standard way to deal with this is to use one of these things, which is like a little mini switch mode DC to DC converter. I've tried putting that in, and what it does is it isolates completely the two pins so from the incoming power supply, so there shouldn't be any ground loop causing that sort of interference. But I've tried that and it makes no difference whatsoever. It does provide isolation at DC, but it seems that these signals, the frequency of the interference coming from that Bluetooth module is too high to make it, for this to make any difference. And as I said, this is before I even connect any audio. So with a separate battery it works pretty well, and there's no interference despite the ground of the output of that audio stage being connected into the ground here via the chassis. So the interference doesn't get through there. So the only answer seems to be a third battery, which is a bit annoying given we've got these two big batteries in there at the moment. I think what I'll probably do is I'll convert the thing, instead of working off 2 PP9s, to work off 3 PP3s. That should be okay. Now, of course, the question is, how do you switch the Bluetooth off? Because I can switch Bluetooth on and off when via the power on that switch, on that spare pole. But there is actually also, I've found, a spare pole on the main on and off switch. So I can feed the power through that second pole, the on and off switch, so it does get automatically switched off as well when you turn the whole set off, and it doesn't leave the Bluetooth switched on.
It was the ball that ended up going out wide, and the cross came in that wasn't from Szoboszlai, that was just too easy for Jan Sommer. Fair play to Widmar. He was getting tight, which meant that the cross wasn't coming with any quality, and I think that's what I'm impressed with Switzerland. Again, I just like...
Today, did you see that?
Yeah, I heard that as well.
So there we have it. It's working as both a radio and a Bluetooth set at the moment, and I'll just have a quick look at what we did in the back here. So you can see I've mounted 3 PP3s in here. These two are the ones that are providing the 18 volts for the main sort of radio bit, and the other one provides the 9 volts for the Bluetooth module, which, as you can see, is now on the back of here. And overall it seems to work quite well. What have we learned from this? Well, I think what we've learned is that it's not as easy as we thought it was. Well, actually I've learned that it's not as easy as I thought it was to incorporate Bluetooth into an old radio without completely gutting it and taking out practically everything, including the amplifier, which is what a lot of people do. And is that because I didn't do it properly? Possibly. I tried the correct method, which I thought the isolating with the DC to DC converter would do it, but it didn't. You can't really blame the designers of Hacker audio amplifiers from the 1960s or whatever for not thinking about Bluetooth interference. It wasn't something these amplifiers were ever going to be designed to cope with. So overall it doesn't really get anything from it. It was all through the power supply coupling, and you can't completely rewire and redo the whole circuit board. So I think what we've done is the best we can do with this sort of thing, and I think it was a worthwhile exercise, and the radio's still a working radio with some extra functionality. I'll see you on the next one.